jumping into the chat because Michael Bolton wants to hear him.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and you had me at hello there. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Also, go to LockedOnDaily.com and find your team's, your favorite team's best newsletter. All the info about your favorite team delivered to your inbox 5 days a week. LockedOnDaily.com. All right, like I said, we are here and we are ready to crack in and talk about the old fantasy basketball, the NBA. We didn't have any games yesterday. We've got a big batch coming up today, 13 of them coming up today, and I'm ready to see what sort of questions you guys have got for me. So let's go through it. Let's get these questions in there. Again, the more generalized the question is, if it's not like super hyper specific to your league, the easier it is to answer and to talk about. So just remember that. CD24 asks a question about the big fella himself, Santi Aldama. Are we holding him or are we jacking him? Look, he's obviously been way better than I have thought all season. I did not think that he'd be able to be as good as he has been. I thought there was a period earlier in the season when players were out where, yeah, that made sense to use him. And then he came back and he was averaging like 5 assists per 36 minutes and shooting 70% from two. And I didn't really believe any of that stuff to be true. But he kept it going. And the last couple of games have been pretty bad from him. The last couple of games, or maybe it was only the last one, whatever it was, right? That's the sort of output that I thought would be more common and that led me to believe that he was a drop weeks ago. So, to me, he is very much on the fringe. It is hard for a reserve player playing 21 minutes a night who's not this permanent beast that Aldama usually isn't to maintain 12-team value. So, I think in general, it would depend on what you're doing with that roster spot. He is not like an absolute must hold on to under all circumstances player, Santi Aldama. Pullout Game says, first of all, he says, cracking name. Secondly, as I just get that question better on the screen, what is Kyle Kuzma's projection if he gets traded to a contender? This is the thing with projections, Pullout Game, and it's why I take a lot of pride in what I do in terms of, and I think people know by now the way that I approach fantasy basketball. We do our projections on Basketball Monster. I talk about getting out ahead of stuff, but there are times that there can be blind spots that I will have, like Justin Champagnie, a good example of that, because he stepped up, he played one big game, he started, I said, okay, well, Kispert and George might play the next game and he'll play 10 minutes and it won't matter. But then they kept getting ruled out and kept getting ruled out and kept getting ruled out. So my projections didn't make sense for someone like Champagnie there because we've got to play the 240 game. I've got to balance it out. And there was no minutes for him, right? So that's how I would play that stuff out. And the same goes with Kuzma here. What's his projection if he gets traded to a contender? I have no idea. I literally have no idea because it would depend entirely on what team he goes to. If he goes to a team where he's going to be considered a Santi Aldama 21-minute a night player, then we're obviously not caring about him really in any 10 or 12-team fantasy league. Let's say he goes, I don't know if you want to count the Philadelphia 76ers as a contender. Maybe you do. But they've got one of the gapingest holes, giggity, at power forward that you've ever seen. So he would start at power forward. He wouldn't get as much usage in Washington, but he'd play 35 minutes. And would that be enough? Would he up his assist in there? Would he be able to be more efficient in that scenario? Maybe. That's why that a lot of this stuff, and when I try to project out, I go, what about if I stash this and this? There are so many moving parts to every single trade. And in this one, it's like, will Kuzma get traded? I don't know. Where does he get traded to? I don't know. What will his role be? I don't know. So it's safe to say that it probably is a lower role, or almost definitely a lower usage role, but it might make him completely useless, or he might still be fine. It really just depends. 12 ink. What's that? What's that number, Roman numeral-wise? 12 ink 8, I guess. The Hong Kong mattress, which is Case and Wallace, or Ben Simmons, you're punting points in a category league. I would take Simmons there. Simmons has shown over many years that he can be an excellent fantasy player. Obviously, hasn't been good of late. We know this. but he played 31 minutes last game. So the ability for him to get rebounds and to get assists far dwarfs anything that Case and Wallace does. So to me, it's Simmons. It might not work, but whatever. Vince asks a question which is going to get asked all the time. Is Bubba Carrington worth a stash? I don't know. In general, a stash is, in a standard format, it's impossible to do, really. For a guy like Bub, who might be the 220th best player at this period of time, you might be waiting 2 months, and then what's he turn into, the 100th best player? You're just wasting a roster spot. Now, if you are sitting at the top of your standings and you are miles ahead of everyone else, you've got a 75% win percentage, you're beating everybody. You have a games cap, you have a weekly limit. That enables more stashing. But in general, I just don't do it. In a standard format, I would not stash anybody. It is a waste of time. Mostly. I just talked about Justin Champagne and Mick Hodge. He's been really good. But like I've said all along, we're going to get a better idea when the three players who have been out who play his position come back. And 2 of them come back today in Kispert and Keyshawn George. And Malcolm Brogdon also probably coming back today. Another player just takes minutes. So Champagne's been great. But he's a two-way guy who was getting 0 minutes beforehand. And if those guys come back, where does he play? David, I'm going to use you as a placeholder for everybody. And I hope you are strong enough to be able to deal with this. His question is, what is a realistic Brogdon trade and subsequent impact of value situation? I do not know, and I do not care. And that should be your opinion on it too. You cannot make moves in fantasy trying to imagine 30 different variables to place a guy like Brogdon in that spot. It is a waste of your time, and the probability of you getting it right is so infinitesimally small, you are just going to get it wrong. Everyone stop wasting time on things like this. We are 2 months away, a little bit less than 2 months away from an NBA trade deadline. Brogdon, for start off, man can't get healthy. Every year you'll think this with any sort of player. You get traded, I'll hold him. And the trades don't happen. Like, it was an obvious thing that Brogdon would get traded last season, yes? He didn't. It's very hard to make these trades in season. David, again, apologies to you. And I use you, David, here because David's such a name that's everyone. So no one's going to identify you necessarily. Don't make fantasy decisions based on trades that you have zero idea about. Listen to the variables. Will the player get traded? Where will they get traded? When will they get traded? Which players would return or leave in a trade? You can't even answer one of those questions, let alone all of them with any level of accuracy to give you a good answer. So don't do it. Or else I'll smack your bottom. David, it's a different David. This is why I use David, because there's too many Davids out here. The Zach LaVine trade rumors are back again, and the roulette wheel has landed at Denver. Do you see this as good as bad? I don't care. I honestly don't care. Again, someone like Zach LaVine, right? And the trades, I don't care. Like you said, the trade rumors are back again. Cool. Have we heard them before? Yeah, 1,000,000 times. And guess what team he still plays for? The same one. Would he end up in Denver? Now, that's going to depend on a lot of things, isn't it? Where his value sits. This is how I like to approach things, very methodically and mathematically. So I would see who would leave. Is it Michael Porter Jr.? The obvious thing to look at, right, is players going out, players going in. How many shots do they take? If you want to get basic, that's it. How many shots do they take? Does Porter take more than LaVine at the moment? If the answer is no, which it is, then LaVine probably takes a hit. Or some of the Nuggets teammates take a hit when LaVine arrives. Does LaVine do the majority of the ball handling in Chicago? Yes. Will he do it in Denver? No. So all those things mean that he's going to take some sort of a hit. But again, if you've got like Zach LaVine on your team, the mental energy that people are expending worried about what happens if a trade, it doesn't do you any good whatsoever. You can't do anything about that. But as a general rule, shots in, shots out, ball handling up or down. They're the things you want to look at in those scenarios. Do I think Emmanuel Quickley will have any value in fantasy this year? Yeah, absolutely he will. When that happens, I've got no idea. But yes he will. When he plays, which again, I hope is soon, he will 100% have value. And if anyone drops him, you should add him immediately. Why do I think, and this is, I love this question from you, Amir Al-Husseini. Keep getting your questions in, guys. He says, why do you think that Dennis Schroder will be total dog water on the Warriors? I don't think that. I never said that. but people put a lot of words into what I said. Let me explain to you exactly. Again, I'll be very clear on this. CP3 did well with the Warriors. No? Did he? Did he? Chris Paul was like a fringe fantasy player who was dropped and added in millions of leagues last season. Chris Paul is a way better player than Dennis Schroder, obviously. Now, I never said that Dennis Schroder would be total dog water. I said I think he will end up being a drop for the main reason that he will not play 34 minutes a night that he played in Brooklyn. He will be playing with better players, so his usage may drop, his ball handling will probably drop, and he will also probably lose 4 to 5 minutes a game, which means he's probably a fringe 12-team league guy. So I think if you dropped Dennis Schroder, it would be okay and you'd be fine. But you don't have to. You can just wait and see where it goes. That's my opinion on it. And also, again, the value of Chris Paul. I think you are completely misinterpreting how Chris Paul was last season because Chris Paul was not good. He wasn't good. He wasn't a useful fantasy player for the majority of the time. So just be very, very cautious about, A, the way that you interpret the words that I say, but also how you view all these situations. I think it's really important to make sure we're getting accuracy with this stuff because you don't want to be making an incorrect decision based on something that you think might be the case when, in fact, it isn't. Cool. Get your questions. Keep them rolling in. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It is the best place to get real money sports action. PrizePicks is. I think you know that. And it's over 10 million members. They've got billions of dollars in winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So you can run your game all season long on PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can make the holidays even bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, and that is the best place to get that real money action. In over 30 states, including the Big Four, California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Unfortunately, I have been told Rhode Island does not count. How many people live in Rhode Island? 10, 20,000? 500? Honestly, you can tell me any number, I believe it. But that's okay. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means that you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can get double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So join now and you can get, well, PrizePicks actually, the holiday season is giving away 2 free picks in December, plus $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. That's a great name. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today, use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rocket RX. If you are ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. You can feel more prepared and ready to perform at your best, and Rocket RX makes that simple and stress-free. Rocket RX gives you FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. And over the holiday season, I guess you never know when you're going to need it, so maybe you give yourself and your little self a gift. Gift yourselves. Give yourself something. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you get trusted care from a real US clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation and you can get your free prescription today. Side note, this is not part of the copy. People say this, no more uncomfortable doctor visits and discreet packaging. Literally, no need to be embarrassed about this stuff. I know that this is a societal thing, but this is a medical thing that happens to a large portion of people, and we just describe embarrassment to it. There's no need for it, man. There's absolutely no need for embarrassment in this sort of scenario. Just treat yourself, but get yourself feeling better. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It takes only 2 minutes. Our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That is rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA, for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex, made simple. All right. Tony Chin says, in Nightcap, what is the lowest ranking backend player that you would consider keeping to stop doing streaming? My worst player is Sohan, and I can't decide whether to drop and stream. It's a good question. So let's assume you're talking about a 156-man rostered league, which is a standard 12-team league. Rankings, as always, 9-cat rankings. If you want to use straight 9-cat rankings, you're going to do yourself a gigantic disservice, and you will end up losing your fantasy league, because that will tell you that Giannis is the 40th ranked player. It will tell you that, I don't know, there's insane things that obviously make no sense in those rankings, right? So if you're just strictly using those numbers, it's going to be incorrect. what I would do is be looking at my team, and overall, you know how I like to do it. Either you can use our Durant rankings, you can use weighted -1, whatever you want to do. I think that, again, it's going to depend quite a bit on your league, but top 120, if there's anyone that's sort of outside your top 120, you're going to be able to get more value by streaming that spot. Just by getting, instead of 3.7 games per week on average out of that one player, you might get 4.7 or 5 through streaming, and that's going to make up the difference. You might even be able to cut that down to a top 100-ish sort of a player. But as a general rule, top 120, the other part of it is that usually we've got waiver acquisition limits per week, meaning that you can probably only use one spot for streaming. So it's whoever really is your worst player. That's the way you look at it. So who is your worst player? And again, unless that guy, I'll push it to top 110 in a weighted -1 or a punt ranking scenario. Top 110, that would be someone I would just hold and get that value from them. Otherwise, I think that position becomes streamable because you might find 40 players at a given time who can produce at least 85% of what your worst player does. And by streaming that number in, you can get that value back plus more. Sponger, I don't think about it. This is the last time I'm going to answer these stash questions. I don't think about it. Stashing for this sort of stuff, like Shaden Sharp, maybe, but like, is Shaden Sharp not getting every opportunity now and he's just terrible at it? Yeah, he is. Right, he is. The guys that you'd look at if you want to really pay attention to, like, who are the players to stash for the end of season, which, again, you need to predict injuries, fake injuries, trades, all that sort of stuff, which, again, leads too many variables to make it a viable scenario. But the guy you'd look at in Portland, it would be Banton or Scoot. Someone who's not doing anything at the moment, is not getting the opportunity, who does get the opportunity, who has shown in the past there is fantasy value there in certain spots. But this is not a... If I would start stashing blokes, the way that when I start to do it, it's normally around like Martin Luther King Day. And the 20th of January, around that sort of time, when I look at it and go, all right, we've got 2 weeks to the trade deadline. Now let's see where things have moved in, what teams look like, what injuries are happening, what trades might go down. That's when I look at it. You're doing it way too early. Brian Glauberman says, since you're a fan of my own league base, would you have a Syracuse salt potato set? I don't, but that is an unbelievably good name, and I do need to get one of those. What I've got coming actually at the moment is some of the new rebrands of the OKC Comets. I've got some of those hats coming at the moment, so I'm looking forward to getting those, but the salt potato sounds actually unbelievable, so I can't wait to get that. Cheese Fella says, do I think the upcoming draft class could be as good or better than the Wemby draft class? Yeah, I would. Yes, I do think it's not going to have the level of talent top end that Wemby is. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is going to be very good, but he's not Wemby. But he's going to be very high up there. Otherwise, yeah, I do think that one and the year after is going to be close to that sort of a level of value, I think. Okay. How do I see Kawhi Leonard impacting the value of Harden, Powell, Zubac? Does it make any of them sell high, even after pricing in Norm's shooting regression? Yeah, they all will be sell highs to a degree. The problem there is there's twofold. Is that everyone knows that is going to be the thing. Everyone knows that there is a problem with that. And then the other problem with it is that if you are, like, because people know about that, you can't actually cash in those players at their current value. And yes, there is a Norm Powell shooting regression that's going to cause a double hit on him. The thing is that Kawhi might come back, he'll sit out games, and that knee could swell up within 2 weeks and he's out again. Meaning that then you've tried to sell high but couldn't sell high because people knew those guys were coming back. So you sold not really high, you maybe sold at value, and then their value pushed back up anyway. So I'm not really... Outside of the regression on Powell, which I think is a solid sell high, everyone is losing shots. Like, Kawhi is not coming in and taking Derek Jones' level of shots. Everyone is losing some. So Powell goes from being the number one option, and he's going to have regression built in. Harden's the number one option, let's be fair, and Harden's assists will stay fine, but he just won't get as many shot attempts. But the uncertainty of Kawhi coming back, like when it happens and for how long it happens, and everyone knows that it's happening, means I don't actually think it's a good idea to do that. Yeah. All right. Galahad, I think you'd know most of this. In a category league draft, I aim to make it competitive on all fronts. No, I don't. I think that is relatively pointless. I'm not going to go into a draft and say, well, this guy in a punt rank is the 80th ranked player, but yeah, his ADP is 120, but I've got to get this guy. I don't do that. but I'm not going in there going, well, let's just keep things even and let's try and work things on the waiver wire. I'll look at my team. I'll look at where the strengths lie. I'll look at where the scarcity of a certain category is. Do I need to grab this now? Can I just forget about it because there's nothing else good coming up? I will very rarely try and keep myself balanced. I just won't do it in a draft. It's just, I don't think there's a point in that, to be honest. Realistically, what would you trade Lowry for? Oh, another one of these questions. Do you want me to say it again? I would not trade for Lowry Markkanen. Do you want to put Embiid's name in there as well? Or, hang on, are you saying what I trade Lowry for? Trade him away? Maybe that's a different question. What would I realistically... Any top 50 player. Anyone who you consider a top 50 player, I would trade away. Wait for the string of games and do that. Oh, good question. Mirko Herenchit says, Lagwagon or Pennywise? Lagwagon by a million miles. I've seen Lagwagon live about 5 or 6 times. I've seen, I think, Pennywise once. I like Pennywise, but it's Lagwagon. Do I think Michael Porter Jr. gets moved? Again, trades. People are so obsessed by trades. And I know the NBA has tried to make... I think maybe I used to really like trades a lot more as well, but I think when you start to look at even the personal impact of trades on the players, it feels a little grimy at times. It just feels a little weird, but also like, yeah, if you think about this and you go, well, what if Michael Porter Jr. is getting traded, whatever, right? Is that nearly every time these things come out, it doesn't happen. So if you just say, where do you think he gets moved? No, you'll just be right the vast majority of the time. The packages seem bad. Yeah, probably because they are. And most of the time, this stuff comes out either through somebody, an aggregator on Twitter, making up stories. B, it was a phone call saying, hey, do you want to give us Porter for LaVine? No? Cool. Discussions were had. It's agents leaking stuff out. It's leverage plays. It's all this stuff. All right, we're going to come back, get some more questions in. We'll get there. We'll get to them. Getting to as many as I can. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all of the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. New customers, you can go ahead and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That FanDuel Sportsbook app has everything that you need to live bet the NFL, and it's all in one place. In the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view all the live play-by-play, everything that you would need to place those live bets on the NFL, and you can do that at FanDuel.com. If we go and have a look at FanDuel.com right now, Nikola Jokic is by far the favorite for MVP, but what about the Rookie of the Year battle? Because we've had, can't believe you failed to pick 17 legend Dalton Connector's favorite before. We had Jared McCain there, who is now off the board, and he will not qualify, and he will not play again this season, is my guess. So the current favorite for Rookie of the Year in what is a terrible, terrible, terrible rookie class, it is Steph Castle at plus 160. By the way, Steph Castle just got benched and played 23 minutes last game. The guy I think is actually going to win it at the moment is actually Zach Edey. He's plus 650. Castle, Messi, and Connect are the top 3, and then Edey is after that. The only thing with Edey might be just games played, considering he's already missed some time. But he's at 650 over on FanDuel. I'd be, that's the one I'd be having a look at right there. But never waste that hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. What about thumbnail Ausar? Yeah, I put him there because I thought people would ask me questions about Ausar Thompson, but no one has, Vince, until you asking me about him right now. So let's talk about Ausar Thompson. Jaden Ivey doubtful today, but Tobias Harris back. This is going to be our big indication, isn't it? Because if Ausar Thompson still starts with Jaden Ivey out and plays 25 minutes, then we're all about it. So look at him. My thing with him is always we can always hold, and we always should hold, multiple thoughts in our head. Ausar Thompson started for Tobias Harris and was really good, and we love Ausar, and he's super athletic, right? That's all good. And if you want to get out ahead of it, you do it. But it's always about, and I always try and do this, I try and be as much of a wet blanket as I can on a lot of this stuff, where I say, that's cool, but it came because 2 players were out and because he started with Tobias out. Now, if he starts again with Tobias back, then we open our eyes and go, oh, okay, that's interesting. But how does that work with Tim Hardaway and Ausar Thompson together? Could he start in place of Hardaway? The problem with that has always been, with Ausar, is how does the shooting work next to Duren? How does the shooting work with Jaden Ivey not being able to shoot? Does Jaden Ivey being out mean that it's okay to put Ausar in there because Ivy can't shoot anyway. He's much better than Thompson. So look, we can add him and we can see where it goes. But we should have a million sort of, not even red flags, just like bits of caution tape where we go, yeah, but maybe not, yeah? Maybe not. It's not as clear, the path to it. Yes? I've never seen Fred VanVleet's name written like that, VVF. What is a realistic trade for VVF, Fred VanVleet, in a points league? A realistic trade is one that you can do. People will go, can you just tell us who to trade for this place? No, I can't. A, I'm not holding your hand. B, I don't know anything about your specific format, your specific league. I don't. And me telling you that is garbage information. It's stupid for me to do that. So what is a realistic target? Have a look at Fred. Let me give you a brief overview of the way to do this. This is a points league sort of scenario. What is Fred VanVleet? What did he average in your league last season? What is he averaging this season? What is he averaging over the last 2 weeks? And look at all those numbers, right? Fred VanVleet probably, given the way that the assists and the ball handling distribution has dropped this season, probably doesn't hit last season's points totals. Does Fred VanVleet, will he be better than what he's currently been in the last 2 weeks? Almost assuredly, yes. He's shooting 10% on threes. Yes, he'll almost be assuredly better. Will he be better than he's been for the whole regular season? I actually think he will be. So the idea is you think that, okay, if you don't have Basketball Monster where we project the fantasy points out and all the fantasy production out, you can have a look at this and go, well, what did he do last season? Let's say 50. What's he averaging this season? 40. All right, well, I think in between there, maybe he's a 43 player. At the moment, he's averaging 25. These are all made up numbers. So what would I give there? Well, if 43 is where I think he can get back to, if I could trade a player he's averaging 23 now, if I could trade a guy that's averaging 34, or 2 guys averaging 30, then you do it. That's sort of the discussion that you have or the mental work that you have on that. That's how I look at it. No effects or ACDC. I wasn't a big no effects guy. So as much as I'm not a big ACDC guy either, but I would do ACDC over that. Over no effects. Apad Trends says, do you think the recent few days of no games has been a breather considering how it can be draining to keep track of everything for fantasy like the All-Star break? For me, yes. Working in this industry, yes. It has been fantastic for me to actually get 2 days to have a breather, to go back and reset a bunch of projections and look at teams and just sort of settle things down a little bit. For someone that works 12 to 14 hours a day for 5-6 months straight, anytime there's these one little days off, and we've got the next one coming up Christmas Eve, and then there's another one, well, the next one's not until bloody the All-Star break, it's important for me to reset, and I think it's important for players. And I know people get, oh man, why is there no games? The NBA really dropped the ball. Like, we have been so conditioned to, there's got to be games every single day in the NBA, and there doesn't really. Like, honestly, it's fine to have them, but there doesn't actually have to be every single day. So yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's going to be useful to see players actually get themselves a little bit healthier. And these gaps are important, I believe. I see people still asking questions about trade values and stashes. Jeez, what's my favorite punt build? The one that works. Like, this idea that there is a winning punt strategy, or this is the one, it's bullshit. It is bullshit. It is. Because it's all about hitting value at whatever spot. If you say, I'm punting free throws, that's the best strategy, and you go in there and you take players because they've got bad free throws, or you reach up for a guy at a certain spot and you get no value, well, you know what it is now? Not the best strategy. The best strategy is the one that gets you the players who get the most value from the spots where you get them, and that can vary at any point. In fact, you can have a punt strategy and completely flip it during the season because of waiver wire things or players that have changed and still be incredibly successful. A mindset of this is the favorite one or this is the best one is a bad way to approach things. My favorite is the one that wins, or the one that works. And that varies based on draft position, players in your league size, league format, anything. We need to be way more flexible with what we do. Talk about Goga. Yeah, he plays for the Orlando Magic. Matt asked about Dynasty BOS. Off the top of my head, that's hard to do because I don't like to give flippant answers to things like that because I haven't actually looked, right, like to see what that would be. The one that I did like as a player who was just getting nothing out of is Kobe Buffkin, and now he's out for the season. So that sort of a player, a Dayron Holmes even in Denver, the guys that are out for the year who aren't going to contribute a single thing, they're interesting options. But otherwise, I'd have to really sit down and look on that. And maybe hit me up on social or drop a comment on this video, and I'll do a little bit more work on it at some point. Would have been a good thing for me to look at over the last couple of days. Projected value, Andy Cruz says, of Devin Vassell rest of season. All I'll say is, Andy, a projected value, whatever, that he's a must-roster player. That is the projected value. Do not drop Devin Vassell. And the fact that people are asking me further solidifies my point that he's a gigantic buy low, because this is also, psychology is such a big part of anything we do, and fantasy sports is no exception. The last time we saw Devin Vassell, someone told me he scored -4 fantasy points in ESPN, which I don't play on ESPN because, but he scored -4 fantasy points. And now you've had like 3 days for that to sit in your head. You go, this guy, this dickhead, he's been hurt, and now he comes back and he gives me -4 points. Whereas I think the 4 or 5 games before that, he absolutely cooked. But people are like, I'm going to drop him. He's terrible. What am I doing with him? All right. This idea of this psychology of people. Not saying it's you necessarily, Andy Cruz, but the value of Devin Vassell is a must-roster top 100 player. That is the value. When is Kingy returning? I thought Kingy was going to be on today, but he wasn't there. So I don't know. I have to check in with him. I thought he was here coming on today. So I'm not sure. I'll check in with him. 9-cap, my worst players are Rui and Bogdanovic, but I have Edie and Sarma. I actually drop them and add those guys. What? Thank Tanraj, first of all, thank you for watching the show for the first time. I appreciate you being a first-time viewer. Because you must be if you're holding on to Rui Hachimura. And you must be if you're having the balls to ask me whether you should hold on to Rui Hachimura in a 12-team 9-cat league. In fact, we are all going to jack Rui Hachimura off together.
Get that garbage out of here.
Yeah, why are you holding him? I'm assuming that's Bogdanovic and not Bojan as well. Yeah, you should 100% be activating Zach Edey for Rui Hachimura. The other one, Bogdanovic for Sarr. Yeah, Sarr can be very iffy. We know this. I think Sarr's got more potential than Bogdanovic this season. But the Rui for Edey one is very straightforward. Bogdanovic for Sarr is borderline to me. I would try and find a way to get both of them in there and see if you've got another worse player. But Sarr's upside from here on out is higher than Bogdanovic's. Without question on that side of it. Another first-time viewer, outlook for Embiid the rest of the season. When he plays, I'm sure he'll be good, but he's not going to play enough, and I did not want him under any circumstance in this league, in this season, and I would not trade for him at all. Value would decline for TJ McConnell with players returning. I think that's relatively straightforward as well. We saw it at the start of the season when Shepherd and Neesmith and Nembhard were all there. McConnell wasn't useful, and then they were out, and he was. Now they're coming back, and he won't be. I think that's pretty obvious stuff. Mike N says, what are my thoughts on the new All-Star setup, Mr. Lloyd? Mr. Lloyd, very, very polite. Again, I don't care. The All-Star game is not for me. It's not. Never has been, but it hasn't been for a very long time. Do I think that it's good? No. I think that it completely, like, they're trying to fix a problem that they think is a big problem by creating more of a problem by like, okay, hey guys, we know that like you don't want to risk yourselves and you like the time off and you're not going super hard. How about we gave you more games to play? Why? My thing would be like, oh, we've got to fix the All-Star game, and people will say that. My thing is, do we? What for? Who cares? I have not watched an All-Star game in years. And again, largely there's a little bit of a break there for me, but it is pointless. The fact that and I know this is an out there take, but the fact that we have so much focus, we've got to do this, what about the All-Star game? You know what the things that are good that you pay attention to is the good regular season games. Putting effort, I'm not even saying you need to fix the regular season game. You need to fix what your focus is. Because the games that are good are the regular season games. That is where teams are competing and they're going hard. And there are great teams producing great results. Versus, hey, we've got to make this exhibition that means nothing. We've got to really improve that and make that super great and make these players really want to fight. They're like, yeah, we're going to really make them compete. Like, there are games either side of this break that the guys will be going super hard at each other. How about you just put some focus there? The All-Star game, I believe, should just die. Honestly, I do. Or you don't have a game. It's something completely different. The new format, ridiculous. Does not fix the problem that people think is there. All right. Should you trade Cade for LaMelo? Guys, you are all obsessed with trades. I get that. Should you? I don't know. I also have no idea what your league is or what your format is. But it is really close. Cade has been, in some points leagues, up in the first round value. My question will be, what is the point of this? How much actually extra are you getting out of this? Both guys have had injuries in the past. That's true. So there's risk there with both of them if you want to believe that. But what are you doing here? What is the point of a trade like this? Is it just to do a trade? Because I'm not really sure what the point of it is. All right. We'll do a couple more questions and we'll get out of here. Does Steph take a hit from Schroder? And how would I compare Steph to LaMelo rest of the season? Does he take a hit? I think yes. Now, part of the reason that I was a little bit more back in on Steph being a first-round player this season was the fact that he would have to do a lot more usage-wise. And we always looked at who's creating shots on this team, right? Because they got a lot of good role players in, like Melton, Anderson, Hield. They obviously lost Clay, who was a pretty high usage guy. Yeah, so the thing to me was Steph was going to have to increase what he did usage-wise, and he has. And Schroeder's not like a super high usage player, but he is like a higher usage player than DeAnthony Melton, 0 usage. So yeah, he's going to take a hit. I don't know how big it's going to be, but I believe Steph is going to take a hit, yes. Will Robbie Williams have a role if Ayton is back? Well, that's the big question, isn't it, John? That's one of the big things to watch today is they got the 3 centers. And the last time they had the 3 centers healthy is they all played. And Ayton played like 23 minutes. So I would think that it's going to be very messy. And if there's one thing we know to do is to trust Chauncey Billups to screw stuff up. So Williams will have a role, but I don't think it's going to be large enough. And I actually don't think it's going to be large enough for Klingon, to be honest. But we're going to see, aren't we? We're going to see how this question goes. We'll do 2 more. N23, Harden is only ranked 23rd in points leagues. Do I see him staying around that spot even with Kawhi? No, I don't. I think that when Kawhi plays, that number will drop. Because he'll just take fewer shots. His assists will probably stay the same. Maybe the efficiency rises, maybe. But he will just take fewer shots. It might be 1 or 2, but he will take fewer shots. So would he drop to 30th? Maybe. 28th? Maybe. But it'd be very hard for me to look at that when Kawhi plays, and I don't think Kawhi's going to play a huge amount, but when Kawhi plays, it'd be very hard for him to maintain that same value, would be my guess. Scott says, Schroeder taking shots from Curry is not something I thought we'd be saying in 20. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's not about that Schroeder, and this is where I do have to be more cautious with some of the words that I say. I'm not coming in here and telling you that Dennis Schroeder is going to be the number one man, the number one top boy, and is going to be out here running everything. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that Steph was the only guy who could create shots and handle the ball. So he was doing everything. So let's say, and I don't have the number in front of me, maybe I should. Let's go and try and find that number right now. Because if we look at Steph's shot, Steph's actually not. He's only 28th over the last 2 weeks in rankings anyway, playing 34 minutes a night, averaging 24.5 points. And by the way, Steph has been, I'm not going to say he's washed because he's not, but he's been a little bit down the last couple of weeks. So he's averaging 16.7 shots per game for the season, but he's up to over 18 over the last 5 games. Okay? He's up to over 18 shots per game over the last 5 games. So last season, Steph Curry actually averaged 19 shots a game. So interesting. And usage was 31. So his usage is actually down this season. And I think it actually might go down even further than this. But it's maybe 1 shot. It's maybe 2 shots. The 18.8 over the last 5 games might become 17.5. Might become 17.3. Right? So that when we talk about him taking shots, it's not him becoming the number 1 player or the lead ball handler or anything like that. It's just about taking a little bit away. Do I think winning the NBA Cup is something players are going to want on their resume going forward? I think that, okay, well, Matt, we can look at it 2 ways. If the question is, do you want this on your resume, right? You look at it this way. If they say, hey, you can have won an NBA Cup or you can not have won an NBA Cup, that's your answer. The pose, well, why wouldn't I want that? It's something I won, it's there, right? Why wouldn't I want that? If I've got the choice to say I can win a cup and look at me, I won 2 NBA championships and 1 NBA Cup versus I won 2 NBA championships, putting the cup onto there doesn't make it look worse. It makes it look better. Now, how you determine how much better, that's what I don't know. But I think It's pretty obvious. The first 2 NBA Cups have been won by the Lakers and by the Bucks. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, Giannis and Damian Lillard. And you can say, well, they're trying to get money for their teammates and do this and do that, but they actually do want it, and they went hard at it, and they were 2 older teams, and they made the point to get it. So, yeah, like if your answer is no cup or winning a cup, then yes, they would want that. How much it impacts stuff? I don't know. It's very early on. And you can say it doesn't mean anything, but that's true. Nothing means anything until it starts to mean something, and you've got to do that through building it up, through a history of stuff. And I actually think it's on the right track. I think it's on the right track. We'll do 2 more questions here. Omer. Absolutely. Come on, man. Who do I think will get traded? I don't know. And honestly, I know this sounds flippant. I don't care. It is a waste of brain power. If you want to see someone make up fake trades, go follow insert NBA alleged source legend aggregator on Twitter. I'm not going to say who it is. And you see people make up trades there all the time. What do you do with Fred VanVleet? You do absolutely nothing. Nothing. You do nothing. You do you want to? I'll say this again for anybody who's asking, what do you do if you have Fred VanVleet? Absolutely sweet F.A. Nothing. Nothing. I'm going to find one more, and then we're going to boot all the way out of here. Do I think Zion's contract will incentivize him to play again this season? GC, this is a really good question to end on because it's complete and utter bullshit. Do I think his contract will incentivize him to play? What do you think is happening with Zion Williamson? And apologies to you, GC, but what do you think is happening? Do you think he's just like sitting back, smoking a fat cigarette? What do you think he's doing? He's injured. I know he's got these non-guarantees in his contract, which I believe the non-guarantee part's already sort of kicked in. So the Pelicans can actually waive him now because of games missed, right? I know that part's already there. Incentivize him to play. He'll play because he's a basketball player and he wants to play basketball. He's injured. His hamstrings are a consistent problem. So the answer to your question is no, I don't. But not for the reasons you think that I'm saying no. The reason is that he's not playing because he's not incentivized to play. He's not playing because he's bloody hurt. And that, well, that's the end of the show. Thanks for everyone getting their questions in. If you've got other questions, you could drop them in the comments, not in the chat. Drop them in the comments, and then me or someone else might jump in and get you an answer for those as well. I hope that was fun, informative, and hopefully you guys can get less hard. Maybe you don't get your Rocket RX going when you're thinking about trades, because it is just going to drive you crazy and you are going to get it wrong. You might get one of them right, but 100 other people will get it wrong, and you'll get all the other ones wrong. There are too many variables and too much misinformation that gets chucked out at this time of year all the way through, and it is just absolutely the wrong thing to focus on. We are trying to play probabilities, and that's like saying, well, yeah, I'm going to be a sports gambler, and all I'm going to do is do 13-leg parlays, and eventually one will hit, and then I'll be rich, and I'll be successful, and you won't. You won't. You might hit one, and that's great for you, and then you'll see FanDuel screenshot it and put it up. Hey, look at this guy, hit his parlay. Yeah, cool. And then everyone else lost, including that guy for the other 1,000 13-leg parlays that he threw out there. That's how you look at trade season. In a positive note, be good. Be good to yourself. Be positive to yourself. Understand that you will always do something good. You'll always do it. Small, big, whatever. There's always good things we can celebrate. We can celebrate with others as well. There's always going to be someone who's going to be trying to tear you down. Don't help them. Don't help them tear you down. Build yourself up. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.